Yeah, boy. Welcome everyone to a Mere Mortals musing session. Good intro. You've got Kyron here. We've got my boy
Juan over here, rocking the white hat, the shiny, nice, bright as hell clothes. So if you're not looking at us on the video, go look at it now. You can be listening to us wherever you are. But it's musings today, folks. And what are we going to be talking about?
Yes. So today, a musings episode is a one where we focus on a topic. Once again, deep conversations with a light-hearted touch.
Correct.
Today, the topic will be differentiating fads from lasting value.
Okay. So why are we talking about this as well?
Yeah, so we received a Boostergram message not too long ago from a friend of ours. Was it Chad F or was it Peter? I can't remember.
Petar. I think it was Petar.
Yeah, I think it was Petar. Petar, the Slav from Scandinavia. He was saying, hey, be careful of NFTs. They're a fad. And I thought that'd be a good topic to bring up, fads. This is a
so we'll
touch
that on that specifically, but then just broaden it out as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I say from lasting value, but it's basically the topic's about fads. We'll figure some things out. So, should we just dive into it?
Did you find a definition for fads?
I didn't actually. No,
okay.
I didn't look that up.
Not that I didn't have a look, but I also think that it wouldn't really help us.
Okay.
I was going to say, is it going to help to find a definition? I don't know. I don't even know if fad stands for something else. Like, this fad is like a shortened version of something else?
No, I think it's its own word.
It's its own thing.
Yeah.
But basically, the way I'm going to take it is, fad would be where something becomes really popular, but in the end, it just kind of like peters out.
Yeah, as in like
that was
kind
of like my understanding from it.
Doesn't live up to it.
Its expectations.
Here, there's what comes up first when I put it in Google.
Tell me.
An intense and widely shared enthusiasm for something, especially one that is short-lived, a craze.
See, I would say that it would have to be short-lived. Like, you can't... Can you have a fad that just, like, is for millennials? Like, I don't know if that's a fad.
Yeah, no.
That's not really a fad. So, for me, it's like... It's when something becomes really popular, then it peters out for one reason or another, and it might still be remembered, but it's not just as popular as it might have once been, or it doesn't live up to the expectations of the hype.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start.
So I think we start. So in saying that,
I want to say one thing at the start. So we're going to be talking a lot about fads, obviously.
Yeah.
And I want to say that not all fads are bad. Like, fads are a cool thing. They can be hella fun. And even though we might shit on some and might be talking about some things, especially if we're talking about NFTs, and we're saying, oh, that's a fad, and you know that then insinuates that it's a bad thing. Not necessarily. It can be a fad and a totally good thing. So just want to put that out at the start. So if people are like, you're talking about fads, you don't know shit, like blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean,
they can be a good thing.
We don't know shit. Correct.
Yeah. But that is correct. Yeah.
That is correct. Well done. You've got that right. But no. I'm going to give you an example of something I actually recently listened to. I didn't even have to research this. It was in Joe Rogan's podcast with somebody else, and they were talking about... they were talking something around the internet, right? But in any case, they pulled out a clip. And in the clip, it was now it might be either 1994 or 1996. Can't say exactly what time it was. But it was a news, basically like a news channel. They were having a conversation, and they were trying to describe internet. And they kept being like, what is this internet thing? And like the news people were like asking each other like, oh, what is it? And someone was trying to say like, oh, it's a way that universities connect and you can see information. And they were trying, like, they had to like walk around and get people to be like, what is the internet?
Yeah, where is the internet?
Yeah, where is the internet? What does internet do? And even to the point of, you know how you'd say, my email is granados@gmail.com. So like to us, that sounds like evident right? And in that video clip as well, they were like, and then, it was NBC. They were like, oh, so, you'd have to say like, Peter, and then what's this? Is that around or at? And then someone was like, oh, no, that I think they say at. And they're like, oh, wow, I would never think it's at. I would say it's around NBC.com, not at NBC.com. So, in any case, what I'm saying is there was a period of time around the early 90s. Now, we were too young for this, but this is going off what I've heard and what I've seen. Basically from 94 to from 91 to 97, right? Let's say about that time, when people just didn't know what the internet was. Like, it was a thing, again, and we'll compare things maybe to NFTs and some new stuff, like you just never seen before. Like, it's the equivalent of, imagine you're walking around and going, oh, I think this is right. How would I go and solve it? I'm going to have to go look at an encyclopedia. Like, I'm going to have to ask somebody who's wise something to all of a sudden oh shit, you can send an email to somebody and you can get a response like within a day if they look at it. Like all sort of crazy mindset, which to us now seems self-evident. And there were so many newspapers at the time and posts and whatever in like books and people talking about it, being like, oh, this is just a fad. Like, how can this ever be used? Like, why would you ever use this? And blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
So what is now to us evident as like one of the biggest things that's ever happened in the last couple of years from a maybe technological advancement, putting us in touch with information, was believed at the beginning to be a fad, right? And funnily enough, so like let's fast forward, came 1999 and 2000. So I recall only slight moments of this myself because I was very young, but there was that Y2K drama. Everyone thought like, oh shit, the things are going to like tick over into 00. Is it going to break the computer? Are we going to get viruses? No, none of that happened. It was just very much hype. But there did come a point when there was what they called the Dotcom Crash. And so maybe most of our mere more light listeners might be too young like us as well to like know about it or remember it. But basically it was a sense where there was just an abundant amount of things on the internet in terms of just people getting like outrageous valuations for like pets.com being like hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, so we should say abundant information back for that time when it
exactly,
was,
yeah.
there
for
was
that
not
time.
much
Correct,
going
because there's
on.
like so much now.
Yeah.
And like a lot of things crashed, a lot of money going out of it, and everyone was like, oh, well, that was the bubble. Like, that was the fad. It's over. And obviously, if you look back at it now, like, so you look at it and be like, how stupid would people have to be thinking about that? But, as we'll probably get into, that's again happened many, 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 many times. So that was kind of like the first example that I went, okay, there's a clear example of where something was thought to be a fad, something that was going to pass, something that maybe just people didn't understand. And in particular to the question, I think, and we'll probably start getting into this, it's like, okay, why would, let's say, Petar think that, hey, be careful with NFTs, that's a fad? What do you think, if I had to say to you, what would convince you that something's a fad or not a fad?
Yeah, nice. So, and that's a different question as to like what Peter might think as well.
That's right.
I think those sorts of things is, dependent on your definition, how you've
risk
grown
averse,
up in life. Your
what you've experienced. Like if you've experienced some of the Black Swan events, so now us, like I'll take people who are a little bit older, right? So people who were there, let's say they were 18 years old in 1995. You went through the .com crash. You went through the 2008 market crash. You went through the 2015, 2016 crash. You went through
Corona crash.
You went through the cryptocurrency 2017 like spike and crash. You've been through the now recent like multiplier of cryptocurrency. All these little things. So you've experienced like 5 up and down, like big up and downs in the last 20 years. You might look at that in like a positive way. You might have come out of it like really hurt and gone, oh shit, like, nah, I'm not dealing with this at all. So it's very much influenced by the experience and your risk aversion and everything.
100%. All right, so these were the couple of things that I wrote down as to what gave me indications of what would be a fad and what might not be. So number one of these was quickness. So I'd say when there's a quick fear, quick money, or quick status connected to it. So strong emotions and incentives tend to cloud judgment. So let's just say the Y2K. You already brought that up. Trains. I remember you telling me about this. So I really hope this is true because this is one sourced information.
No, this is definitely true. This is definitely true.
And what was it? Was there something to do with people's internal? So when trains were first being invented,
it was basically the premise that when trains were very first being invented, people's idea was that that would be moving too fast for the human body and your organs would just like displace themselves. That was basically the understanding at the time.
That's what I thought you'd said, which is like hilarious when you consider how fast the world is turning around through outer space, and it's like
correct, exactly.
We are going, what is it, like 48,000 k's an hour or something, at this very moment. Shit. So when there's those strong things connected to it, when there's those quick things connected to it, so quick money, obviously, the tulip craze, if you've ever looked into that, in the Netherlands, the Dutchlands, in Poseidon, which was a great one I learned here in Australia, which was a company called Poseidon. It was a mining company. The standard thing. They got some nice copper results, and everyone's like, or gold results, and everyone's just, holy shit, like, all they had was core samples. All they had was a couple, and not even like multiple. It was like a couple of core samples. turns out, all of these bullshit things like, oh yeah, no, we overestimated how much it was, and it was just a real individual,
pump and dump,
yeah, one of that. And then even things like, the quick status. So this would be like pogs, having those little things that you used for flipping Tarzos and shit back in the day.
Tarzos, I remember those.
Yeah, they were fun. I used to own a whole collection
Beyblades,
of them.
Beyblades. There was, but again,
and then even the
but let's
things like
differentiate.
Ice Bust.
But let's differentiate that, because I think that I wouldn't say Beyblades are a fad.
Okay, I would have said.
And so here's where I'll try and challenge it. So, to me, a fad would be something where it occurs, it's remembered, but it's no longer like used or utilized. Like that's kind of like what I would kind of go with a fad. Like where something, I'm just trying to like be very specific. Like Tarzos, let's say.
Would you consider fidget spinners a fad?
Yes, because like that's a perfect example. Like I would consider fidget spinners a fad in the sense that became popular, both trending in like social media, people were buying it, and I would be almost like, I'd say only 1 out of 100 people, maybe even like less, you could tell someone, I've got a fidget spinner, do you use a fidget spinner daily? And they'd be like, no. So there'd be people who have a fidget spinner who got it during that fad time, but I'd be hard pressed to find people still like caring about them.
Yeah.
That to me is like a clear fit. Like that to me is a clear fad. But Beyblades, I could see people like school kids still using Beyblades. So it's not that it's past. It's that maybe the time when it was popular has gone down, but it's still being utilized. I'm talking like fad is like where it's like, it became popular, but then it's like basically like nobody's using it anymore.
Well, yeah, I don't know about the Beyblades, and with all of these, like these are sort
very
of
subjective. This is very, very subjective as well.
I'm sort of using these as indications. So if there is a quick status that you can gain from it, i.e., I've got this really cool fidget spinner, and I can go out and get that right now. Quick money, I can get like these massive gains really quickly. That's the same sort of thing. Like a quick fear or a solution to this fear, a strong emotion attached to it. It's more likely that the object or whatever is taking up the attention is a fad.
Yeah, and I think it's like this. It's good to say it's more likely, but it isn't the only thing. It's more likely, like it's specific, more likely, but it isn't the thing, because that like someone could challenge you there and say, well, what about some random coin that, let's say, Cardano like rocketed up 100x over the last year or 2 years. Hey, that went up really quickly. Like, is that a fad then? So it's like, yes to a lot of things, but it doesn't apply to everything.
Yeah. I would say like I've got a list of 5 here. Yep. 4, and I would say it's the combination of all of these.
Correct.
So,
I would say
these are just small indications. Another one, real world effects. So I would say if you're changing your routine without even meaning to, all these things are just happening to you, and you're starting to realize like, oh, I'm really into CrossFit now. I'm sure there was people saying CrossFit is a fad, and
for sure,
because it had a pretty explosive growth. One thing I'd never heard of it before.
But that's
probably
a funny
like 2010
thing.
or something.
That's a funny thing as well. It's like, and again, this is not correct. So I'll be very broad in the range here. I at least know that there was CrossFit game type things happening like 12 years ago, right? But before that, CrossFit still existed. Like it was a thing even before that.
Yeah, of course,
So it was around for a while and then became popular. And then, there was like the big CrossFit like fad hype thing. Is it still around? No, but it still continued. But at least for that period, there was this hyper expectation or hyper like influence of like, oh, everyone wanted to do CrossFit and took a shit about it.
Yeah.
So there was that moment.
So it's like, was it overvalued maybe? Was it maybe overemphasized? Maybe did it have too much attention for what it was worth?
Maybe.
But I wouldn't say it's a fad.
Okay. Yeah. But that's an example of what you mean by that.
Yeah. So another thing, like if it's a physical product that's sort of been around or suddenly in your face and whatnot. So just because there's a lot of attention now on the electronic scooters, for example, you see them all around Brisbane right now. Are those a fad? I'm going to say no, because there's just such a tremendous amount of effort, time, energy, maintenance, infrastructure related to all of those things. Are they a fad? I'd say no. Like that to me says like there's real world effects, there's people actually using these and things like that.
Okay. Yeah.
That indicates to me that electronic scooters, they're probably not a fad. They're probably going to stick around for a while.
Yep. Okay.
Longevity. So if it's already been there for a while, I would say this can
More
maybe
likely
used
to
as
not be a fad.
Yeah, this can maybe be used as a predictor of sorts. So this is something's come up and you're like, is this a fad? So I imagine at some point in the future, we will have a book which is empty and it's like an electronic reader, and the electronic ink will put up on your pages on this, and so you just download a book into it, and it's, you know, the perfect size for you. The font is the perfect size for you.
Yep.
You can physically turn the pages of this thing, and it will feel like a book,
be like a
book, as in what we imagine when we talk about books nowadays. Will that thing be a fad? I would say probably not, because people have been reading, you know, for as long as, like, you know, thousands of years since you know, language is invented, pretty much. So is this particular product going to be a fad? Probably not, because there's a huge wealth of like longevity, prosperity of people using something very similar to it, i.e. the act of reading. So another one, if someone for today had a soap that regrew itself, for example, so there was some algae on it, and
it's like a mushroom base, and it would regrow.
So it like takes spores from the air. It's, you know, it sort of makes an algae, and then the soap actually just maintains this constant like limit of length and size and whatnot. Is you know, the self recharging soap, is that going to be a fad? I'd say probably not, because people need to use soap. So is that an indication of it being a fad? You know, it still potentially could be, because it could just turn out to not work so well. So maybe it can be a fad. But I would always say, you know what, longevity-wise, it's got a good chance of going around. How much time has there been of, you know, people spinning things in their fingers? You know, that's a pretty specific one. You could say, oh, but what about people having fun? Well, yeah, that's a longevity thing. People like to have fun, but when you get into the details of the fidget spinner, it's like...
Yeah, it's just that. Yeah, okay. I think the extra one that I would add as well on the ones that you've mentioned, because a lot of these still don't explain, say, what about social media? Because let's say with social media, that doesn't really exist beforehand, right?
True.
It made a lot of people a lot of money really quickly, so a lot of this stuff. So the extra one that I would add, because I was thinking about this, was the new thing, whatever the new thing is, whether it's a digital thing, whether it's a physical thing, or whatever it may be, if it actually has... And this is the thing that you wouldn't know really in the moment, but if it has the ability to create multiple areas or multiplication of the actual users, then it's less likely to be a fad. So we're going to take this retrospectively, and then we're going to get into NFT specifically, because I think this one applies. So I think all of those apply for sure, and I would overlay it with this one, and this is the reason. So like, say with the internet, sure, you wouldn't know it at the time, but if you look back on it now, you go, holy shit, the internet could impact food, and it could impact, you know, the way you watch movies, and it could impact the way you send emails rather than mail. All of these multiple users. So, you know, it's got a core like technology behind it and the protocols and whatnot, and it's been built up over time. But the absolute plethora of functions you can do is like insane. Like, just so many possibilities, right? Same thing with social media. Let's say at the time, Instagram, perfect example, right? When Instagram was created, it was purely like a digital app so that people who were photographers could just use like a couple of filters and take a photo of something and be like, oh, using a different filter. And it was used like that for a year. But there was a potential, obviously, that came with it, where it's integrated with sales, with advertising, with stories, with all these other different ways, with location, tagging, etc., etc., etc. And then just the broadness of that can come from that. Again, people wouldn't really know about it, but it happened. Like, that eventuated. My comparison was a fidget spinner, right? You think of a fidget spinner. Could you envision that a fidget spinner is going to have like multiple users, right? Could you be like, this fidget spinner is going to help out like cancer? It's going to do like advertising.
It's going to revolutionize the energy industry, because all these kids using this, it'll become like a chargeable battery, portable.
Exactly. So I think mine is, if something's going to have multiple functionalities or multiple channels of use, that's less likely to be a fad. So for me, fidget spinner, 100% a fad, right? Another one that I would say falls under all of those things you were saying, 3D TVs, you know, with the glasses. It was one of those where it's only got the one use. Like, you can only watch with 3D glasses with the TV. It needs a big uptake. You know, it's pretty expensive to like get into. It just didn't get picked up. let's try it. Some people would have used it. I don't even think it got to like hype level, like fad level. It's just like people were just not even using it. I'm like, man, whatever. But then it comes to NFT.
Wait, there's one more I
Okay,
had.
one more.
So the last one was specificity. So
Specificity.
So you could say, oh my god, that cute red striped basic blah 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 dress with, you know, sexy thing. Yeah, okay, that might be a fad because it's very specific.
Gotcha.
But,
Okay.
Summer dresses going to be a fad. Winter jackets going to be a fad. No, like as a whole, they're broad enough. Much like you were saying just then, they're broad enough that it's going to be, that industry will be fine, even though within it there might be.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Because actually, I was also thinking like wide-legged jeans or like you know, really flared jeans. You know, it's a big thing. That's very specific. Are jeans ever going to go away? Probably not. But like that particular might be a fad. Might be a particular decade or a couple of years that gets used and then kind of gets forgotten about.
Yeah. So unless it's like totally revolutionary, one of a kind type of like, holy shit, this is a completely new thing. If it's a smaller thing inside of a larger genre, that makes me think, oh, okay, yeah, that could be a fad. Like that's more likely to be a fad than
correct. Yep. Okay, let's get onto the main point now for Petar. NFTs. Are NFTs a fad? Should you trust them? Are they going to get away?
Those are completely different questions.
That's true. I'm getting very broadly here. NFTs.
Let's stick with the fad part.
Let's stick with the fad. Let's go with fad.
I would say no.
Now I would say no. So my answer is no. But I'm going to try and what is it? Is it called strawman or Iron Manning it? No, not Iron Manning.
Steelman.
Steelman's when you're supporting it, right?
Yeah. So Steelman is when you're making the other person's argument as strong as you can.
That's right.
Strawman is when you're saying
that's right.
dumbass things to make their argument look really stupid.
Good little detailed description. So I'm going to try and Steelman from the opposite side, as much as I can. Good. So I would actually say that unless there was players interacting in the NFT space, and again, you know, if you're just listening to us, me and Mortal Lights, and you don't know what NFTs are, look, I'd probably say go back. We've got a couple of videos and conversations that we had in the past around NFTs, so we're not going to get into the specifics of it. Yep. But just so you know, non-fungible tokens, it's interacting with the blockchain.
Yep, that's good enough.
But I would say that if the players in that space, in that ecosystem, are only interested in art and money, if that's the orientation and maybe the overall ecosystem, then I do think that they could be a fad. If they only remain there and they don't decide to move forward, because I would imagine that there are multiple users for NFTs, like we're talking with the example, but if they remain in that single path, then I do envision them becoming some sort of fad and also coming down. That would be kind of like my take on it, at least trying to steelman that particular idea as to why maybe someone with that more knowledge of it would say, yeah, that could happen. And it could. Like, it actually could. Like, we're not saying that it's going to be like the bee's knees. We think it would be, but it might not be. Definitely, there's a possibility of that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, all right, I'm going to try and apply this to some of the things that I was just talking about. So, quickness with the NFTs, you could say that in one way, because everyone's starting to talk about it, like, you got to get in right now, etc., etc. But it's...
let's give some facts as well with some of these things. So, you go through that, and I'll try and provide as much facts as I can of, like, yeah, is it really? And then, like, for people to understand.
All right, this will be difficult because I don't know that much about the history of NFTs or where they come from. But I would say, like, you know, we're talking about quick money before. Yes, okay, there's a strong component, at least of what I'm seeing right now in the NFTs, of quick money. That makes me think,
that's true.
Yeah, okay, that's a little bit indicative of a fad.
That's correct.
So on the quickness scale, I would say, yeah, it's trending more towards a fad.
It is, yep. And so again, here some facts for folks. I think the very earliest NFTs on the Ethereum blockchain were built in 2016.
Okay.
And most of the like more popular ones in 2017, specifically CryptoPunks by Lava Labs. And they were basically priced very low. I'm talking like 1, 2 Ethereum for a long time, until they became up to like 15, 10, 20, that sort of range for a little while, and then only really blew up the last couple of years. So definitely there's been a really hyperinflation of them in the last couple of months.
Yeah, but once again, you know, is Amazon, it went through hyperinflation as well. It's not the scale change of it, it's the I guess quickness and that part of it is
And
that
also,
the
correct, but and also, and we talked about this initially during the .com crash, Amazon went down by 91%, I think it was, from their share portfolio down to like a couple of dollars. So, it's also gone down to the brink of like not existing to all the way where it's down.
So actually, in a way, you said with starting in 2016 or 2015, whatever it was.
2016, yep.
It's been 5 years, and for a long time, it sort of just was sticking there. How long were the pogs and, how long were fidget spinners stuck in that stage? Was there a dude just constantly pumping
marketing
them out
for 3 years? Yeah.
I have a feeling not really. I have a feeling that one little thing got caught, someone got caught on traction, and all of that happened really, really quickly. Like, there wasn't a long build-up to them. So the real-world effects, I would actually say on this one, it's got a good point, particularly just with Gary V's one, which you've bought two of, and that one where he's just used it in a really unique way of providing access to the VCon. That's the main one, but also all the small things. So you can go courtside tickets with him. You can have a 5-minute convo with him. You can get random gifts sent to you from wherever with him, from him or from the organization, I guess. You're planning on going to the US if you can. You Juan here are planning on trying to get across the world, spend a shit ton of money, and spend a shit ton of time to do that. And
because of an NFT.
That's all related to that NFT. Correct. I would say, that actually has some real world effects. And the use cases you've explained sometimes of, i.e. using it as a NFT for a ticket to a conference, but more like Ticket Tech. So Ticket Tech goes out of business because NFTs essentially replace that.
Yep.
And then it's
replace a middleman, basically.
Yeah. And then, people keep tickets from when they went to that concert of Linkin Park in 2001. NFTs, you probably do the same thing on your phone. I went to this event. You've seen this with the POAPs.
The POAPs, I hope you know them.
Yeah. You see that with the POAPs of people saying,
do you remember what the POAP stands for? It's the proof of...
attendance protocol, I think.
That's the one. Proof of attendance protocol.
Yeah.
Which I don't think we've mentioned that too much in here, but proof. It's just basically proving that you went to an event.
Yeah, and this could be an online event, so...
correct. Or an in-person event.
Yeah, or a QR link appears. You have only the X amount of time within the event to prove that you were there and doing it, and then it shuts off, and then
correct.
Forever recorded that, hey, I was at this Bitcoin event. Hey, I was at, etc. Longevity, this is one where I'd say it's pretty good at the moment because it's, the main use case I see at the moment is art, and art's been around, since the dawn of human time. So new ways of using art, I'm totally on board with that, and see why that has value, And then specificity, I think this one is, it's just so broad, like the amount of ways you can use an NFT to me says, okay, you can actually find really exciting, weird ways of using it. It can be a piece of art, but it can also be a ticket to an event, and it can also be, a bunch of the other things that it can be a visual, actually entertaining thing. It can be a status thing that you put on your Twitter profile.
That's correct.
Correct. Yeah, for me, it seems like it's almost like it's a whole new thing rather than being a specific genre, a fancy new dress that's part of the whole fashion industry. This to me seems like it's a
whole new thing. Yeah, and look, the way that it's also been said for a lot of people, like a lot of people now are comparing it to, and this is people who I trust and who have caught on to the internet at the very early stages, social media at the very early stages. That's kind of like the next thing, right? The 3.0. So there's a big talk of, this is digitizing culture, this is Web 3.0, all big words. Is it going to live up to that hype? Look, maybe it won't. Maybe it won't. So maybe is Petar thinking like, is this going to be like this huge thing? It might not actually be a massive thing, but I definitely think there's going to be a place in the world for it. Like, is it going to stick around? Yes. Is it going to be used for a lot of things? Yes. Could it become like the next massive thing? Yes, it could. It could also not. But I also don't think it's going to just go away and people are just going to lose a lot of money. In saying that, if you're thinking from the currency, like from the money perspective, I definitely think that there's going to be a crash for it. I 100% think there's going to be a crash for it. Why? Because there's just an influx of people into it. And same thing as it happened with social medias, same thing as happened with internet, right? Like the .com crash, that happened for a reason. It was just inflated, right? There was just hyper amount of people into it. It crashed. People were like, it's a fad. It wasn't. The base functionality, the base protocol, all of that, it was usable. It's just that, it obviously inflated, had to restabilize, on food goes. Same thing as, like, I'm going to put NFT slightly different to cryptocurrency, but it's just the same thing. I just expect it to be hyperinflation. There's going to be some sort of crash. People are going to come out of the system, but what probably will then remain is going to be the actual base functionality of it's still the same thing. Like, it's still that existing technology to go and use something else.
Yeah, it's like how many peak periods has Bitcoin gone through now? Like 3 or 4
something like that.
real big ones?
Yeah.
Every time that happened, was it a fad? And with the first one, you could have said, yeah, that's a fad.
Yeah.
After the second
third time?
Maybe not. The third one, I'm not so sure. Fourth, like now it's getting to the point where it's like, okay, this is just a way that it's like a function of the Bitcoin itself or of the cryptocurrency itself, that it's going to have huge peak periods. It's going to die down. And, that's just what happens.
Yeah, and then the more I think about it as well for like NFTs with that, it's more the explaining to people. Sometimes again, it's maybe the people
it's
are
so hard explaining.
Because the way I'm trying to say to somebody is because people who may not be new to it might just see NFTs as, hey, why would anybody pay for this image, right? For this monkey, for this crypto punk? Why would you pay for that?
That was my initial. Absolutely my initial.
That was probably everyone's initial thing, right? What the hell? Why would anyone pay that? And I think the more I'm trying to describe it in this way for people that maybe Petar, this might change your mind, is if you think about it, so imagine a block of code. So just imagine 100 lines of code, right? Or whatever it may be. The image is just one line. The image is just one line of this 100 lines, right? It is just like literally either a CDN link or the image or whatever you may have. That's all that is. All the rest of it, and you can go from 100 to 1,000 lines or whatever else. You can fill it with all the other good stuff. But what actually really matters, is that you, the Immortalites, as the individual there, you have that block into the blockchain. So the fact that it's you, that basically it's like a signature that basically says, yeah, you own that piece of code into the blockchain, that's the valuable bit. Like, that is the technology that, coupled with a smart contract, is the technology that's going to go further. So, I'm not saying that I'm excited about more images, more monkeys coming out, and more like, blocks of paint or whatever. I think some of them are cool. I think the fact that it's building culture and societies and that digitally is probably more exciting, but then that base technology to be used elsewhere, that's the exciting stuff. Like, that is what's going to be the big thing for me, I imagine, in the next 10, 15 years, and why I would say, that is not a fad. That is a technology or a way of working that would just disrupt endless amounts of businesses, like endless amounts.
I think the problem right at this moment is you hit the nail on the head with like the explaining it bit. There's the internet. I wouldn't know how to explain it, but I don't need to anymore, because it is so much a part of everyone's consciousness that you can talk about it in the stupidest way possible, and people are like, oh yeah, the internet, I use that every day, that sort of thing. So with NFTs, for example, similar sort of thing. Like, I could get this JPEG anywhere. Why would I pay 13 million for this?
And also, we're not also understanding. This is just historical. We're not understanding just how quickly life is changing. Like, so in Sapiens, I was reading at the moment, right? It's the example of, if you were in the year 1000, right, and you went to sleep for 500 years, and you woke up, life didn't change too much. Like, you could wake up 500 years later and go, okay, different people, but life's about
new
the same.
Method of planting crops, for example, but you're still planting crops.
Exactly. Yeah, you're still doing a couple of things changes, but it's not like huge. So that's 500 years, right? Now, if you went to sleep in 1950, like literally 1950, or like you're in a coma or whatever. Let's say you're in a coma, you're like 20 years old, right? And you go waking up like in 2020 or 2021, right? So I don't know, you're very old now, but let's just imagine this happened. you would be mind-boggled with how much has changed. Like you couldn't even conceptualize that. How in the world would you explain to someone at that level of being like, hey, you can you can purchase this picture that's worth like millions of dollars, and they would have a concept of art through this like digital portal thing that you put. It just would make no sense, right? Like absolutely no sense. But even just shorten that even more. Like again, if you weren't around, if you just didn't know or understood like what happened with social media, and you kind of like stepped away for it, right? Like let's say you understood internet, you kind of missed out on social media, and you're like, oh, it's just like that's where you put pictures, right? Again, you would feel like these things with images, it's just a fad. But I think the more you understand, I guess, how those really impactful technologies have actually changed things, you might look into it deeper and go, oh, okay, cool. I could see this actually working out pretty good if all the interested parties actually play the right game.
Yeah.
So maybe there's the other. You could quote this like, if everyone's wanting to play a long game, then it's going to go really well. If everyone's trying to play like a short game about money, okay, maybe it won't work out so well.
Yeah, for sure.
So
very good. I think that's a good covering of the
good.
topic.
Yeah, I think Peter. I hope you. I really hope individually you did listen to it. And hopefully, maybe it helps out. Give you at least our perspective, and anyway, maybe anybody else who's listening to us in the Immortal Lights.
Send us a boostergram refuting it.
Yeah. At that point, I think we've covered it enough to say why we believe it.
He sends us like 50 boostergrams, all two
negative
sentences.
one Satoshi.
No, like all 2 sentences long.
Yeah.
In trying to refute it.
No, you are incredibly wrong.
Yeah, and I'm like, hey, I'd appreciate it.
We tried. Look, we obviously there's our beliefs. It's not like we're saying it's absolute gospel. It is just two mere mortals explaining their thoughts, their ideas from what we've learned.
I'm gonna buy my first NFT in hopefully 7 hours.
Oh shit! I'm keen to hear.
Sorry,
how
Peter.
I'll
he's just like, you dickhead.
We come back like in a fortnight or something and be like, oh yeah, by the way,
I'm in rags. I'm like all dirty and shit, like real disheveled.
It's like, welcome back to the Immortal Lights. We don't have a video camera because we have to sell it so we can eat food.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll either be audio only for the next couple of while, or something else will happen. So we're going to end it with that. Me Immortal Lights.
Your shirt is like now black, just with grime and shit. Like,
Clean the floor with
coloring.
Yeah.
I can't afford to.
I'll be wearing just random other clothes and be like, I'm just dealing with people on the street.
I spent all my money on that soap that regrows itself to clean my shirt.
God damn. All right, Immortal Lights. We're going to leave it at that. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you, as we said, if you can leave Boostergram, send a little message.
Yeah, send us Boostergram. That's what we want. That's right. That's mostly what we want nowadays.
If you want to,
so much fun.
You can still reach out, comments, DMs on Insta. All the different social profiles.
Mere Mortals Podcast.
That's right. They're still all good. All the website. Go check out the website. There's going to be some changes coming there as well.
Yes.
We're going to have some conversations, but more to come.
That's it.
Stay tuned. All right, folks. That's it. One out.
Current out. NFT time.